What happens when an undercover CEO tests his insurance claims team, only to be horrified by what they say to desperate clients? Let's dive to see. In the heart of downtown Chicago stood a towering glass building that housed Integrity Assurance, one of the nation's leading insurance providers. At its helm was Robert Marlowe, a man whose sharp mind and unwavering commitment had built the company from the ground up. Robert wasn't your typical executive. He wore simple navy suits, carried a leather briefcase that showed years of use, and spoke with a voice that carried both authority and warmth. Robert had started as a claims adjuster himself, working long hours in the early days to understand every aspect of the business. He remembered those times vividly: the late nights studying policy documents, the countless conversations with clients who were often at their most vulnerable moments. This hands-on experience shaped his leadership style, making him deeply empathetic toward both his employees and their customers. The 45-year-old CEO believed strongly in fairness and integrity, values he instilled throughout the organization. Yet lately, something felt off. Reports from various departments hinted at growing disconnects between corporate policies and frontline interactions. Complaints trickled in about poor customer service, but these were dismissed as isolated incidents. Still, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper might be amiss. One evening, while reviewing recent client feedback reports, Robert noticed disturbing patterns emerging. Clients described feeling dismissed, unheard, and even mistreated during some of their most trying times. These weren't just numbers or statistics. They represented real people facing genuine hardships. The weight of this realization pressed heavily on Robert's shoulders, prompting him to consider an unconventional approach. He decided it was time to go undercover. Not out of distrust for his employees, but out of genuine concern for the quality of care his company provided. Robert wanted to witness firsthand how his claims team handled cases, especially those involving clients in dire situations. But more importantly, he hoped to understand why such discrepancies existed between his vision of exceptional service and what clients actually experienced. This decision marked the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything Robert thought he knew about his own company. It wasn't just about uncovering potential issues anymore. It was about reaffirming the core principles that had driven him since day one. As he prepared to step away from his corner office and into the shoes of an ordinary client, Robert felt a mix of anticipation and unease. What he was about to discover would change not only his perspective but also the future direction of Integrity Assurance. Robert began his preparations carefully, ensuring no trace of his true identity could be detected. He dyed his naturally dark hair to a salt and pepper gray, grew out his usually trimmed beard, and purchased secondhand clothing from thrift stores around the city. His new persona became Ronald Carter, a middle-aged construction worker struggling to make ends meet after a workplace accident. Ronald's story was crafted meticulously, a fall from scaffolding resulting in multiple injuries, forcing him to file a claim against his employer's insurance policy. On the morning of his first visit, Robert woke before dawn, shedding his usual suit for worn jeans and a faded flannel shirt. He rehearsed Ronald's backstory until it felt natural, memorizing details about fictional family members and medical history. Standing in front of the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The transformation wasn't just physical, it extended to his demeanor, speech patterns, and even posture. Gone was the confident CEO. In his place stood a weary man carrying the weight of financial uncertainty. As Ronald Carter, Robert entered the bustling downtown branch of Integrity Assurance, heart pounding with anticipation. The waiting area buzzed with activity, filled with people whose faces mirrored varying degrees of stress and desperation. He took a seat near the back, observing the dynamics between staff and clients. Some interactions seemed professional yet distant, while others bordered on dismissive. Each exchange added layers of complexity to Robert's growing concerns. When called to the counter, Robert approached nervously, clutching his crumpled paperwork. "Hi, I'm here about my work injury claim," he said softly, his voice trembling slightly. The receptionist barely looked up from her computer screen, asking for his identification without making eye contact. This small moment set the tone for what would become an increasingly disheartening experience. Throughout the following weeks, Robert visited different branches under various aliases, each encounter revealing troubling patterns. Claims representatives frequently displayed impatience, cutting off clients mid-sentence or rushing through explanations. When asked about specific policy details, many resorted to vague responses rather than offering clear guidance. Most alarming was the lack of empathy shown toward those clearly in distress: widowers seeking coverage for lost income, injured workers fearing foreclosure, parents struggling to pay medical bills. One particular meeting stood out vividly in Robert's mind. As Michael Reed, a single father dealing with severe burns sustained during a kitchen fire, he sat across from a young claims adjuster named Todd. The conversation unfolded in a manner that left Robert deeply unsettled. "So, Mr. Reed," Todd began briskly, shuffling papers on his desk, "we'll need detailed medical records and proof of all expenses related to your treatment." "I've already provided those," Robert replied earnestly, leaning forward in his chair. "But there are still gaps in coverage I don't understand." Todd sighed audibly, glancing at his watch. "Look, sir, these things take time. We have procedures we have to follow." His tone carried an edge of irritation, as though explaining basic processes was beneath him. "But my daughter needs specialized care," Robert persisted, his voice rising slightly. "I can't afford delays. She's missing school because of this." "Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do to speed things up," Todd responded coolly, tapping his pen against the desk. "If you want faster results, maybe you should have chosen a better policy." These words struck Robert like a physical blow. Here was a man representing the very company he'd built, speaking to someone in genuine need with such callous indifference. The disconnect between corporate values and frontline behavior became painfully apparent. With each interaction, Robert's initial unease transformed into growing outrage. How had things deteriorated so far from the ideals he once championed? The emotional toll of these experiences weighed heavily on Robert. Nights spent analyzing recordings of his undercover visits revealed recurring themes: lack of compassion, inadequate communication, and an overall sense of detachment from client struggles. What disturbed him most wasn't individual instances of poor service, but the systemic nature of these problems. Policies designed to protect vulnerable individuals were being implemented in ways that seemed deliberately obstructive. During one particularly difficult session, Robert found himself sitting alone in his apartment replaying a conversation between Jason Thompson, a disabled veteran, and another claims representative. The raw emotion in Jason's voice as he pleaded for assistance brought tears to Robert's eyes. "I gave everything I had for this country," Jason had said, his voice breaking. "Now I can't even get help paying for my medication." These moments of vulnerability forced Robert to confront uncomfortable truths about his organization. The company he'd worked so hard to build had somehow lost sight of its fundamental purpose: serving people in their greatest times of need. The realization filled him with both shame and determination. Something needed to change, and it needed to happen quickly. But first, Robert realized he had to dig deeper to fully understand the root causes behind these widespread issues. Robert's investigation took an unexpected turn when he discovered a hidden layer of operations within the claims department that contradicted everything he believed about his company's values. During one undercover visit, posing as Victor Lane, a small business owner recovering from a devastating fire, he overheard a private conversation between two senior adjusters in the break room. Their discussion revealed practices that went far beyond mere inefficiency or lack of empathy. "We're hitting our denial targets again this quarter," one adjuster boasted, leaning back in his chair with a satisfied grin. "Management loves seeing those numbers rise. Keeps bonuses flowing nicely." His colleague nodded knowingly, adding, "Yeah, but you've got to be careful how you phrase things. If clients catch on, they start appealing, and then it gets messy." This revelation shocked Robert to his core. What they described wasn't just aggressive cost-cutting. It was a deliberate strategy to deny legitimate claims through technicalities and loopholes. Policies written in intentionally complex language allowed adjusters to pick apart applications, finding reasons to reject coverage based on minor oversights or ambiguous clauses. Even worse, Performance metrics tied to denial rates created incentives for staff to prioritize profit over client needs. Determined to gather more evidence, Robert expanded his undercover efforts, focusing specifically on high-value claims. As Harold Bennett, a recently retired engineer battling cancer, he engaged in lengthy discussions with several adjusters, carefully documenting their tactics. One representative, Mark, demonstrated particularly sophisticated methods of manipulation. "Now, Mr. Bennett," Mark began smoothly, spreading out documents across the table. "Let's review your policy thoroughly. See here? It says experimental treatments aren't covered unless pre-approved by our medical board." He pointed to fine print that required magnification to read comfortably. "But my oncologist insists this is standard protocol," Robert countered, maintaining his role as herald. "And I submitted the approval request months ago." Mark smiled sympathetically, though his tone remained firm. "Unfortunately, it looks like the paperwork got lost somewhere along the way. Happens sometimes. Now, if you want us to reconsider, we'd need all documentation resent, plus additional forms completed. Might take a few weeks to process." Each interaction unveiled new layers of this systematic approach. Adjusters used delays strategically, knowing many clients would give up due to mounting medical bills or simply lack the energy to fight. Others exploited psychological vulnerabilities, presenting themselves as sympathetic listeners while subtly planting doubts about the validity of claims. Worst of all, these techniques were openly shared among staff members, creating a culture where denying coverage became a badge of honor rather than a cause for concern. Robert's discovery of this shadowy practice left him reeling with conflicting emotions. Anger burned brightly at first, fueled by the realization that his company had been operating contrary to its stated mission. But beneath the rage lay profound sadness. Sadness for the thousands of clients misled, sadness for the employees reduced to pawns in a game of corporate profits, and sadness for the erosion of values he once held dear. As he reviewed transcripts and recordings late into the night, Robert found himself questioning not just his leadership, but the entire structure of modern corporate governance. Could any organization truly balance profitability with ethical responsibility? Or had he been naive to believe it possible? These thoughts haunted him, keeping sleep at bay and driving him toward a decision that would forever alter the course of integrity assurance. Robert's resolve hardened as he uncovered the truth behind his company's operations, but the situation grew even more complicated when he discovered a personal connection to one of the victims affected by these unethical practices. While reviewing case files in preparation for upcoming reforms, he stumbled upon a familiar name, Daniel Peterson, a former colleague from his early days as a claims adjuster. The shock of recognition sent waves of guilt and regret crashing over him. Daniel had been one of Robert's closest friends during those formative years, often staying late to help process claims and sharing stories about his family life. They'd parted ways professionally years ago, but Robert had always kept tabs on Daniel's career progress, proud of how far his friend had come. Now, reading through the details of Daniel's current predicament, Robert felt sick to his stomach. The man who once stood beside him fighting for fair treatment of clients had become yet another casualty of the very system they'd worked so hard to build. According to the file, Daniel had suffered a severe heart attack last year, leaving him unable to work and dependent on disability benefits. His application had been denied 3 times, citing minor discrepancies in medical documentation and alleged noncompliance with treatment protocols. Each rejection letter bore the signature of supervisors Robert personally trained, people he trusted to uphold the company's values. The final appeal was pending, but given the established patterns, the outcome seemed predetermined. This revelation hit Robert harder than anything else he'd encountered during his investigation. It wasn't just about impersonal statistics or faceless clients anymore. It was about someone he cared about deeply, someone whose suffering could have been prevented if only the system hadn't turned so cruelly against its own. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, forcing him to confront uncomfortable questions about his role in allowing such practices to flourish. Over the next several days, Robert immersed himself in Daniel's case, poring over every detail and identifying precisely where things went wrong. What he found confirmed his worst fears. deliberate obstruction at multiple levels, combined with automated systems designed to minimize human intervention. Appeals were processed by junior staff with little understanding of medical complexities, while higher-ups focused solely on maintaining high denial rates. Feeling compelled to act immediately, Robert scheduled a meeting with Daniel under the pretense of discussing investment opportunities. When they met at a quiet coffee shop, the changes in his old friend were heartbreaking. Once vibrant and full of life, Daniel now appeared gaunt and weary, his once confident demeanor replaced by resignation and despair. "Robert, it's good to see you," Daniel greeted weakly, shaking hands briefly before settling into his chair. "How've you been?" "Doing well, Dan," Robert replied, choosing his words carefully. "Listen, I heard about what's been going on with your claim. I want to help however I can." Daniel chuckled bitterly, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "Help? There's nothing anyone can do at this point. The system's stacked against me. Every time I think I've got all the right paperwork, they find some new reason to deny it. My doctor even wrote letters supporting my case, but they just keep saying it doesn't meet their criteria." Hearing these words spoken aloud made Robert's chest tighten with emotion. He wanted to reveal everything he'd learned, to assure Daniel justice would be served, but timing was crucial. Instead, he listened attentively, letting Daniel vent frustrations that had likely gone unspoken for months. By the end of their conversation, Robert understood not just the procedural failures, but also the emotional toll these practices inflicted on individuals like Daniel. This personal connection deepened Robert's commitment to reforming integrity assurance. No longer was it merely a matter of correcting organizational flaws, it was about restoring dignity and hope to those who'd placed their trust in the company. As he walked back to his office that evening, Robert felt a renewed sense of purpose guiding his steps. Whatever sacrifices lay ahead, whatever challenges arose, he knew one thing with absolute certainty: the old ways must end, and a new era of transparency and compassion must begin. Armed with overwhelming evidence and renewed determination, Robert initiated sweeping changes throughout integrity assurance, starting with a complete overhaul of the claims processing system. He gathered his executive team for an emergency meeting, presenting findings from his undercover investigations alongside case studies like Daniel's. The room fell silent as he laid out the grim reality. Years of misguided priorities had eroded public trust and compromised the company's core mission. "We've forgotten why we exist," Robert declared firmly, his voice carrying both authority and emotion. "We're not here to maximize profits at the expense of those in need. Our purpose is to provide security and peace of mind when people face their darkest moments. Anything less betrays the trust placed in us." His first directive targeted the incentive structure driving inappropriate behaviors. Bonus programs tied to denial rates were immediately abolished, replaced with metrics emphasizing customer satisfaction and timely resolution of claims. Training modules underwent revision, incorporating scenarios designed to foster empathy and understanding among staff members. Role-playing exercises simulated challenging situations, helping adjusters develop skills necessary for compassionate yet effective communication. Next came the implementation of technology solutions aimed at reducing bureaucratic hurdles. Automated systems previously used to flag potential denials were reprogrammed to identify areas requiring special attention, ensuring no legitimate claims slipped through cracks due to administrative errors. A dedicated appeals committee composed of senior executives reviewed contentious cases personally, guaranteeing thorough consideration of unique circumstances. Perhaps most significantly, Robert established a client advocate office directly reporting to him. This independent body monitored interactions between staff and clients, providing feedback and intervening whenever necessary to prevent recurrence of past mistakes. Regular town hall meetings created open forums for employees to voice concerns or suggest improvements, fostering a culture of continuous learning and adaptation. Throughout this transformation period, Robert maintained constant communication with stakeholders, sharing updates through newsletters and video messages. He encouraged transparency by inviting select clients to participate in focus groups, gathering insights that informed ongoing enhancements. Personal visits to branch offices reinforced his commitment, demonstrating willingness to listen and learn from those closest to daily operations. Despite initial resistance from some quarters, particularly among longtime employees accustomed to old ways, positive changes began taking root almost immediately. Stories emerge of adjusters going above and beyond to assist clients, motivated by newfound pride in their roles. One representative stayed late assisting a widower complete complex paperwork, while another coordinated resources for a family displaced by flood damage. These acts of kindness, though seemingly small, signaled a shift in organizational culture toward genuine care and concern. Financial performance indicators initially dipped as approval rates rose, but these losses proved temporary. Word spread quickly about Integrity Assurance's renewed dedication to fairness and integrity, attracting new clients drawn by authentic reviews and testimonials. Retention rates climbed steadily as existing customers appreciated the improved service quality. Within 18 months, the company achieved record-breaking revenue growth, proving that doing the right thing didn't have to come at the expense of profitability. Most gratifying for Robert was witnessing the impact of these changes on individuals like Daniel Peterson. After a comprehensive review ordered by Robert himself, Daniel's claim received approval retroactively, accompanied by compensation for undue hardship endured. A heartfelt letter from the CEO expressing regret and outlining measures taken to prevent similar occurrences restored faith not just in the company, but in humanity itself. As Robert reflected on this journey, he realized the true measure of success wasn't found in balance sheets or market share rankings. It resided instead in countless lives touched by kindness, in relationships rebuilt through honesty, and in the enduring belief that businesses could operate with both heart and head intact. The road ahead promised challenges yet unseen, but armed with lessons learned and values reaffirmed, Robert faced them with confidence, knowing Integrity Assurance had rediscovered its soul. Months later, as winter gave way to spring, Robert Marlowe stood on the observation deck of Integrity Assurance's headquarters, watching sunlight dance across the Chicago skyline. The transformation he'd spearheaded continued unfolding below, each floor humming with renewed energy and purpose. Employees moved with greater intention, their interactions marked by genuine care and mutual respect. Clients visiting branches reported noticeable differences in service quality, often commenting on how refreshingly human the experience felt. Yet amidst this progress, Robert remained acutely aware of the delicate balance required to sustain such positive change. Corporate memory proved notoriously short, and complacency lurked ever-present, threatening to undo hard-won gains. To combat these dangers, he instituted quarterly review sessions where leaders examined emerging trends, identified potential pitfalls, and adjusted strategies accordingly. These gatherings became opportunities not just for problem-solving but also for celebrating successes, reinforcing the importance of staying vigilant while appreciating milestones reached. A particularly poignant moment occurred during one such session when Daniel Peterson, now partially recovered, accepted an invitation to address the assembled group. Standing before colleagues who'd once doubted his claim's validity, Daniel spoke candidly about his ordeal and subsequent redemption. "You know," he began, voice steady despite emotion evident in his eyes, "when I first heard about these changes, I thought maybe it was too little, too late. But seeing how far you've come, realizing the effort put into fixing what went wrong, that gives me hope. Not just for myself, but for everyone out there counting on companies like yours to do the right thing." His words resonated deeply within the room, prompting spontaneous applause that lingered long after he finished speaking. For Robert, this validation carried immense significance, affirming the path chosen despite inevitable sacrifices along the way. Professional risks taken, personal comfort zones breached, all seemed worthwhile compared to the tangible difference made in people's lives. Looking forward, Robert envisioned expanding Integrity Assurance's influence beyond traditional boundaries. Partnerships with community organizations provided resources for preventive education, teaching individuals how to navigate complex insurance landscapes effectively. Workshops offered free consultations, helping underserved populations access coverage options previously inaccessible. These initiatives aligned perfectly with the company's renewed mission, protecting not just financially, but holistically. Still, challenges loomed large on the horizon. Technological advancements demanded constant adaptation, requiring investments in cutting-edge solutions while maintaining accessibility for all demographics. Regulatory environments shifted unpredictably, necessitating strategic planning to ensure compliance without compromising core values. Competitors adopted similar rhetoric regarding customer-centric approaches, forcing integrity assurance to differentiate genuinely through consistent action rather than empty promises. Through it all, Robert clung tightly to lessons learned throughout this transformative journey. Empathy remained paramount, guiding decisions big and small. Transparency fostered trust, enabling open dialogue essential for growth. And perhaps most importantly, remembering why they started, protecting people during life's toughest moments, kept everyone grounded amidst swirling complexities. As twilight descended over the cityscape, casting golden hues across skyscraper windows, Robert felt a profound sense of fulfillment mixed with cautious optimism. The road traveled thus far proved arduous yet rewarding, shaping not only his company, but also himself as a leader. Challenges awaited ahead, yes, but equipped with strengthened resolve and unwavering commitment, he faced them ready, knowing together they'd continue building something truly remarkable.
If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.